Good Tuesday again to you and everybody in Gov 603. Welcome to week 5, our review of your material from week 4. All right, good to be back. There, much better. Okay, so having discussed what we're going to be doing now in week 5, let's take a look back at week 4. The questions, your answers, and maybe add something to it, shed some light, sort of flesh it out for you. Okay, question number 1. Summarize Pownder's section on what a literature review is not. Of the many mistakes Pounder covers in the section, which one have you made in a past research paper? Okay. This is particularly pertinent to you because you have part 1 of your research paper due on the 24th. So make sure that your literature review is doing what it's supposed to do. Corey, you went first. Let's take you first. Pounder points out 4 things that a literature review is not. First, it is not an article by article summary of the pieces you read. That is extremely important because that is perhaps the most common mistake that I find. Someone says, well, I read this and I read that. And then, no offense to the author, but the question is, okay, you read this and then you read that. So what? All right. We go back to Corey. This means that you aren't just listing items from what you have read, breaking down each piece per paragraph. Yeah, literature review is not a book report for each of the sources, articles or books or chapters that you read. Okay, second, a literature review is not an historical background to your topic or case. Okay, now it can contain a discussion of, the history, but that's really better placed in your introduction. Okay, so you could touch on it a little bit, but that's an introduction material. Okay, good. When doing your review, you can presume that your reader has some base of knowledge about the subject that you were speaking on or speaking about, and therefore it doesn't need to provide a bunch of historical data. Again, you can do that if and it might not be that people know. You can put this in the introduction. Third, your literature review shouldn't contain every piece of information that you've gathered. Get the good stuff, the stuff that's going to be most helpful to you in writing this paper and doing this research, not everything you've read. Many of the pieces you have read have little or nothing to do or support your case and can be omitted. When you use too much data, you run the risk of losing your main point and your reader's attention. Amen to that. Finally, your literature review is not a literary review. That is, you're not, a literary review is a particular type of critical review of fiction or creative nonfiction. Back to the book report thing. A common thread between a literature review and literary review is that they focus on evaluating others' works. Okay, good. Now, the only thing that you left out, Corey, is, which of these mistakes, have you made as a researcher? And in fact, that's, a lot of you said, well, I've never conducted a research paper before. This is my first one. I'm not quite sure, et cetera, et cetera. All right, that's, I'm probably not going to ask you on an exam what mistakes you've made in conducting a research paper, but I may very well ask you to tell me about what is and is not part of a literature review. Okay, question number 2. According to Runyon, why should we be cautious of a single causal explanation regarding an individual and his or her behavior? And this is, the article of why did Van Gogh cut off his ear? Okay. This is particularly pertinent in political science because we're often trying to figure out when we're looking into this historically, why does somebody do something? Whether it's policy or a proposal or a lack of response, what is up with that? Okay. So why should we be cautious of a single causal explanation? Corey, you didn't go first, but I really liked how succinctly you put this. So we're not just focusing on Corey, but you did a good job with this. Being cautious of a single causal explanation for an individual's behavior is essential because human behavior is multifaceted and influenced by a wide range of factors. Adopting a more holistic and nuanced approach to understanding behavior can lead to a more accurate and comprehensive view of individuals and their actions. Exactly. Now, this is, we must confess, one of the problems with quantitative research. It frequently happens, and you'll read this in the research that you do, and you'll do it yourself, that people will examine an event and boil it down and sort of lay it at the feet of two variables, one causing the other, as if the one variable is in itself a singular cause of the other variable. And in life, that's just not true. Now, what does happen in quantitative research that you do multivariables, called multivariate analysis, in which you look at a whole lot of them and you try to, figure out what are the main variables. It's kind of like the weather, right? What are the main elements that is going to go into it raining or not today? All right. So you can do multivariate analysis. We're not going to do multivariate analysis. That's a little more complicated. But beware of reducing everything to single causation, because that's just not how the world works. Okay, question number 3. On January 6, 2021, it is alleged that more than 2,000 entered the United States, 2,000 people, I guess I should say, in the United States Capitol building in Washington, D.C. The rioters, as alleged, entered the Capitol building after a speech given by President Trump, in which it was alleged that he used 22 grammatical variations of the word fight. In March of 2022, excuse me, Joshua James, 34, Arab, Alabama, a member of the Oath Keepers, pled guilty to seditious conspiracy for his part in the riots. If you were going to write a research paper on the January 6 riots, would you utilize case-oriented or populated-oriented research methodology? In other words, this question gets at, can you tell the difference, and could you tell me the difference? Now, somebody emailed me and said, I'm a little confused about this. Can you discuss and explain the difference? Yes, we can. Natalie, you did a really good job with this answer. Let's pull on what you had to say. When writing a research paper on the January 6 riots, the U.S. Capitol, the choice between case-oriented and populated-oriented research methodology would depend on the specific research objectives and the questions you aim to answer. Both methodologies have their merits. It's possible to integrate elements of both. This is true. You don't have to pick one or the other, depending on your research design. Here's a breakdown of each methodology and how they might be unified. And what we're going to do is, for this answer, is I'm going to stick to the definitions of the methodology. Okay, case-oriented and a description. It's kind of like grilled cheese sandwich. The recipe sort of in the name. A description of the methodology is in the name. Case-oriented. Case-oriented research focuses on a specific event or events, very few. The case, the event, the variable, or case in detail. In this context, or in this methodology, maybe better put, it would involve a deep dive into the January 6th riot as a single cause study. So in other words, could we say that there was a single cause that caused this riot? Now, those that conducted the trials and those that pointed the finger at President Trump, they were using a case-oriented methodology, and the specific individual, the case in this case was, guess who? President Trump. Okay. It allows for, back to you, Natalie, it allows for an in-depth analysis of events leading up to and during the riots, motivations of the participants, their actions, legal proceedings following the events, and the impact on the American politics and society. Case-oriented research is suitable by providing a comprehensive understanding of the January 6th incident, including its causes, consequences, and individuals involved. So fundamentally, it assumes that there were, it's sort of which end of the event do you look at, whether you're talking about population-oriented research or case-oriented research. If you're looking at the it was this individual or these individuals or this saying, this statement, that's why I put that bit in there about alleged grammatical variations of the word fight. Okay, you could say, aha, it was this individual and these grammatical utterances, these variations on the word fight, that was the driving force, it was the causal explanation of the rioters. All right. But what if you wanted to look at it using a population-oriented research methodology? Back to you, Natalie. Population-oriented research methodology, on the other hand, focuses on broader trends, patterns, or characteristics within a population. So you would say, well, yes, I mean, you could say the president did speak, and whether you agreed or not that there were grammatical variations on the word fight. If you're looking at this from a population-oriented methodology, you'd say, but let's take a look at what the mood politically was across the populace. Were people, neutral researcher that you are, were people upset enough and disconnected enough and distrustful enough of the political process that they would have done this, if somebody had used grammatical variations on the word fight, or if somebody had just said, now go home, go away, the wizard's busy or something, Wizard of Oz. So you would be looking at the broader elements as variables within the populace rather than specific events and specific individuals. Okay, back to you, Natalie. It might involve analyzing broader context of political populations or polarization, the role of social media, presence of extremist ideology that contributed to the event. This methodology can provide a larger scale perspective on factors that led to the January 6th riots and their implications for democracy and government. Populated-oriented research is suitable to explore the wider societal and political context that gave rise to the incident and how it fits into a larger trend. Good. Okay. Does everybody understand that, especially, who you are, that emailed to me and said, I'm really not sure how or what the difference is between these two. And adopting these methodologies in itself doesn't mean that you assume. Let's stick with the case of January 6th. If you took a case-oriented research methodology, it doesn't mean that you assume that what caused January 6th was Donald Trump and the grammatical variations on the word fight, or, the Proud Boys or Oath Keepers. It doesn't mean you assume that. It just means you ask the question. It just means, well, were there case events, specific events that drove this? On the other hand, if you take a populated-oriented research approach, it doesn't mean that you don't think that those specific events didn't have anything to do with it. What you're interested in is what was the broader mood of the populace? How did things, not attached to any specific individual per se, like social media, play a role in organizing people there and getting them there? Or what was said on social media that might have led people to push into the Capitol? So it's looking at the problem from two different angles, but you're still looking at the same problem. You're still looking at the same question. You're still doing the same research. And doing the one doesn't presume that you don't think the other had anything to do with the event. So if you do case-oriented, it doesn't mean you don't think that there was population-oriented. Or if you do population, it doesn't mean there's a case. And this is, Natalie, where you get down to the unified method. And I'm going to let everybody, if you haven't read that, go to and look at Natalie's answer. And this is for people that are in section 5. Okay, good answer, Natalie. Okay, final question. According to Huntington Klein, why should a researcher be concerned about the relationship between two or more variables? Michael, you went first on this one. Let's take you. Regarding the relationship between variables, for any variable in a relationship, also a single variable looking for a context, it is important to remember the goal that the researcher is most interested in is causality. Yes. Now you have a good, thorough answer here, Michael, but you, boom, nailed it right in the first sentence. Because what we're after is causality. We're not. I mean, you can do stuff that just establishes correlation. Something happening at the same time as other things. The type of statistics that's used for that is and I mean literally, like what are these? What do we call these number sets? Is often referred to as descriptive statistics. It just, for instance, if you had a big jar of jelly beans in all kinds of different colors and you push them over on a counter and you counted them all up, and you could, and they come out of the factory. The factory puts them in these huge jars. And you could say, in this jar of jelly beans that just came out of the factory, there are this many reds and this many blues and this many yellows and this many greens. Okay, so what? That's correlation. All right. Now, if you want to say, why are there so few red jelly beans as opposed to so many green jelly beans. Well, now you're looking for causation. And that's what your primary job. It doesn't mean that you can't do descriptive statistics. They have their place. But your primary job as a researcher is to figure out what's the causation. In this case, you might go, red dye number 4 has been associated with risks of cancer and was given all sorts of nasty warnings. And so jelly bean companies, that would be one variable, the findings of cancer researchers concerning food additives. And jelly bean companies were afraid that if people saw a lot of red jelly beans, they wouldn't buy their jelly beans. So they started putting fewer red jelly beans in the jelly bean jar. Causation. See? So not only why, as a researcher, are you concerned with at least 2 or more variables because you don't have causality without them. The question is, what are you primarily concerned with? And the answer to that is causality. Okay, good answer, Michael. All right, everybody. Have a great week. Remember your papers. I'm here to help you with those, but I got to be honest. If you email me like Friday or Saturday, there's probably not a lot I'm going to be able to do for you. And honestly, I work hard to stay out of the office on the weekend, as I spend enough time in this, in the commander's chair. Okay, so try to get a hold of me before then. I have office hours Wednesday and Friday. All right, everyone, I think about you. I pray about you. Have a great, great week, and I'll see you on Canvas. Okay, bye-bye.